Welcome into Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. Getting ready for Game 3 of the World Series on this Monday, October 28th, 2024. Brendan Glasheen joined by Sean Zerillo and BJ Cunningham. Sean Zerillo's got the full breakdown for Game 3 in written fashion over on the app, actionnetwork.com, with opening pitch. We're going to dive into this game. The Yankees are down 2-0. The Dodgers lead at 2-0, however you want to frame it, based on your rooting interests or how you look at this series so far. Walker Buehler, Clark Schmidt, your pitching matchup as the series shifts to the Bronx. The Yankees are favorites, minus 146 to win Game 3, the total at 8.5. Sean, just before we dive in, like where's your mind at temperature-wise of the series? And I guess I'm asking that because do you still are the Yankees okay? Are the Yankees okay?
Yeah, happy Sports Equinox Day, 31st in history, 31 my lucky number. So hoping for interesting World Series as we wrap up here with Game 3 and get 3 games in the Bronx. But obviously the Shohei Ohtani injury was super determinative for how you would project out the remainder of this series. He is worth about 3% to each game and about 4.5% to the overall series projection based on how I calculated it out. Obviously, that 3.5% over the remaining 5 games. If it were only a 4-game series remaining or 3 games, the percentage would be slightly different. But about 3% in each game is what Ohtani is worth to my money line projection. Is he fully healthy? I don't know. It's tough to gauge, right? After a partial shoulder dislocation, probably shot it up with a cortisone shot. It's honestly impossible to tell how it's going to be feeling, whether he's at 100%, just like with Freddie Freeman's ankle. He got extra time off. He's still hobbling around on it, but he's hitting bombs. So it's difficult to judge, right? How much of an impact the injury is going to have. It's there. You can factor it in slightly. You can maybe use it to push yourself on or off of certain bets. Now, with regard to all of the bets that I placed for Game 3, essentially most of them, they've moved out of range relative to where they opened after Game 2. And I believe the line kind of opened assuming that Ohtani would be out because the Yankees were closer to minus 150 or minus 155. I would make them minus 160 without Ohtani in the lineup. I make them closer to minus 140 with him in the lineup. After the Ohtani positive update on Sunday from Dave Roberts, not from the organization officially, by the way, but from Dave Roberts, that was a little awkward. They moved down. The Yankees moved down to minus 140, minus 145. And that's roughly where I project them with Ohtani in the lineup against them. So I think the market adjusted appropriately. However, the total just kept moving up. And that was what I found a little bit more odd because the totals opened at 7.5 minus 120, 8 even money for this matchup. They moved up to 8.5. Where I should say they moved up to about 8 juice, like 8 minus 115. Then when Ohtani was announced in, they climbed up to 8.5. So I shouldn't say they didn't move after Ohtani was announced in. It did come up to a flat 8.5, but now it just keeps ticking up higher. And now we're getting close to 8 minus 120, 8.5 plus money on the under. I made this total 8.75. So I'm right between 8.5 and 9. That's the part, that's the number where I bet 8.5 plus money over, 9 plus money under. So I've got 7.5 over. I've got 8 over. Now the total is getting a little bit too high for me. If this gets to 9 under it plus money, I'm absolutely going to try to middle the total on 8 and 9. And then hopefully at worst it lands on 9. We win our 8s, we win our overs, and we push on the under. So that's the closest bet that's in range right now. The others are Yankees first 5 at minus 145 or Yankees full game at minus 140. I wouldn't place a large bet on either of those. But I do think the Yankees have the starting pitching advantage in this matchup. And Walker Buehler, the things to watch for on his side of this matchup, particularly, one is his velocity, because his final 2 regular season starts, just like Jack Flaherty, Buehler was at a career low velocity in those starts. His velocity stuff, everything across the board dropped this year relative to prior seasons, but even throughout the year, his velocity was waning as he came down the stretch. In his NLDS start against the Padres, gave up that 6-run inning. His velocity was actually in line with his season average, so it went back up relative to those final season starts. Then in the NLCS against the Mets, it went back down. But, and if you may have realized this looking around baseball Twitter, he had a career high in movement on his pitches in that start against the Mets, which means one of two things. Either the atmospheric conditions at Citi Field, along with the mound height, influenced the movement on his pitches, or he's cheating. One of the two. He introduced sticky stuff in the playoffs. It has to be one of the two. And Yamamoto in his start the next day after Buehler pitched had a career high induced vertical break on his fastball. So there's a lot of speculation that the conditions at Citi Field, the mound height, influenced the increased movement on the pitches for these guys. This is not Walker Buehler suddenly found it in time for the World Series before he hits free agency. The velocity was at a career low. There's no reason why the movement should have spiked to a career high again, unless it had something to do with the impact that Citi Field had on those pitches, or he's using sticky stuff. One of the two. So keep an eye, if you can, if you know how to, on Baseball Savant tonight in the first inning for the movement on those pitches. If you don't know how to, go to Twitter, type in Buehler IVB, and hit search, because people will be talking about it after the first inning, because it should dip below 17 inches again on his fastball tonight. The other thing, obviously, to watch is his velocity. He was sitting 93.8 in his last start. Again, that's a career low. He was at 95 on the season. See where that fastball velocity is sitting in the first inning. If it's back up to 95, I'd be a little bit more encouraged about his effectiveness tonight. If it dips back below 94, I think live overs, live Yankees would be the way to go. Other than that, it's difficult for me to find a betting angle on this matchup, because Buehler may get left in there a little bit too long, because the Dodgers have a bullpen game tomorrow, so they're not incentivized to take him out. And then on the Yankees side of the matchup, if you go to opening pitch, I broke it down, but his best two pitch types against the Dodgers are his two best strikeout pitches. And even though the Dodgers have slashed their strikeout rate drastically in September and in the playoffs, Schmidt is incentivized to throw his two best strikeout pitches against them as often as possible. So I do not like the player props really for either Buehler or Schmidt. I'd lean Schmidt under 4.5 strikeouts. I'm probably passing there. As I said, Yankees first five to minus 145, full game to minus 140. And then at this point, we're looking under 9 at plus money, because the over 8.5s are gone.
Okay. Extensive breakdown on Walker Buehler, who's never pitched at Yankee Stadium, and he just made his debut at Citi Field the other day.
And if you, again, an opening pitch, the mound height, the release point heights of Citi Field and Dodger Stadium are very comparable. Yankee Stadium is much more different than those two parks, so it should have a much more different effect on how the pitches look coming out of his hand. Again, we don't really know what it's going to look like until he starts throwing them off of a mound, but we will have data in the first inning, so we could adjust live pretty quickly if the movement is down, or if the velocity is down, or both are down relative to that last start.
Buehler's strikeout prop set at 4.5, and it's the outs recorded at 14.5. BJ, what do you think? I mean, if you like the Yankees in the first five too, so is this a Walker Buehler angle? And we can get into more New York if you have thoughts there.
Yeah, I agree with Sean. So I think what the most fascinating thing about this game is how long Walker Buehler is allowed to be in this game, quite frankly, because we were in this exact same scenario against the Mets in Game 3 in the NLCS, and Walker Buehler did not see the order the third time through. They took him out after 4 innings, and they went to the bullpen. Now, like Sean said, with a bullpen game coming up for the Dodgers in Game 4, does Dave Roberts allow Walker Buehler to do what happened against the Padres, where even if he gives up 6 runs, we're just going to continue to let him go? I think what the score of the game is actually going to be very important to how long he's actually left in there, right? Because like against the Padres, if they're down 6 runs, there's no reason if they have a bullpen game coming up to just like completely utilize their bullpen, right? So if they have a lead, or if this game is tied, you might see Walker Buehler be out after he sees the order 2 times through. Now, I'm with Sean. I'm not totally sold that like he's completely found it and he's suddenly now the Walker Buehler of like 2021, or like when he was actually at his peak. All of the data suggests that he's been a well below average starting pitcher for a very long time throughout this entire season. I mean, yes, he had a great start against the Mets, but away from home this season, he has a 5.24 xFIP. His fastball is allowing a 4.46 expected weighted on base average. So if his velocity is down and he's facing the best fastball hitting team in baseball, against the Mets, he utilized that sweeper and that knuckle curve a lot, like way more often than he usually does. It was a very diverse pitch mix from him. And that's probably what he's going to have to do in this matchup, because as you've seen, the Yankees haven't been that great at hitting off-speed pitches. They're drilling fastballs left and right. But the prop that I like on Buehler here, because I do think there is a better off chance, given how he pitched against the Mets, that Dave Roberts will leave him in there longer. So I like taking him over 4.5 hits allowed at plus 135. If his stuff is there and it's great, he may strike out more batters than we see. But also, he's very, very vulnerable to giving up a lot of hits with that fastball against this Yankees lineup that completely drills them. So it's an interesting game. I was more interested to see, like, okay, how does Walker Buehler pitch in like 50-degree weather in New York? Well, he did that already at Citi Field. So for me, Walker Buehler over 4.5 hits at plus 135. I would rather just take a plus 135, because over 3.5 hits allowed is minus 175 right now, which I don't want to pay that big of a price, especially. So I would rather take the bigger price on that, because I do think there is a chance that Walker gets left in there a little bit longer. But also, we don't know, so I don't really want to take an outs prop like over 14.5 if Walker Buehler suddenly sees the order 2 times through and he's gone. And he could get blown up too. There's also that possibility as well. So that's kind of how I'm looking at this. I do also like with Sean, I like the Yankees for the first 5, projecting them minus 172 for the first 5 innings. I'm kind of with Sean, in line with the market for the overall game. I'm at 142 for the Yankees and 8.6 for runs. So I think that like Sean said, the Yankees definitely do have a starting pitching edge here. And I do think there's a good chance that Walker Buehler gets left in there a little bit too long.
Yeah, his outs prop is actually moving down from 14.5 to 13.5. It was 14.5 kind of across the market when it opened. Schmidt has been at 13.5 the whole time. Some books have moved to 13.5 on Buehler as well. But the hits prop has not moved. The strikeout prop has not moved. Just the outs prop is moving down. So curious to see if the other markets adjust in concert with that. Typically they do. But as of now, they have not. So yeah, it seems like the market is starting to fade Buehler's usage in this game. I'd imagine with their bullpen game, the Dodgers can afford, and this is like the key point for tonight specifically. They used Treinen for 55 pitches in games 1 and games 2. So they might want to avoid Treinen tonight, but they also used Anthony Banda, Michael Kopech, and Alex Vesia on back-to-back days in games 1 and games 2. I'm sure they would like to have all 4 of those guys available tomorrow for a bullpen game. Obviously, if they have a lead tonight, to go up 3-0 in the series, they'll be happy to use those guys. But if they can get through today without using them, or if they fall behind, they're certainly not using them. But on top of that, they have 3 long relievers. They have Landon Knack, Brent Honeywell, who pitched really well in the NLCS, and also Ben Kasparius. They can probably afford to use one of those guys tonight, not 2, and definitely not 3. So Buehler likely goes 2 times, then maybe gets lifted for one of the long relievers if he's struggling. Maybe he starts a 3rd time through the order and they play it from there. But yeah, I tend to lean under. They do have enough long relievers set up that they can afford to pull him. And I think in his last start against the Mets, they had used all of their long relievers, the game in front of him behind Flaherty, right? So it's actually a different situation than his last start, where maybe it was they wasted the long relievers in that start before the bullpen game against them. I can't 100% recall, but the point is they can only use one of their 3 long men tonight behind him, and 4 of their key relievers have already worked back-to-back days. So there's some iffy spots where there is like unclear usage, whether they would want to leave him in and just waste him or not. And I think, as BJ said, it is very determinative on the score. If they're down 6-0, he probably pitches longer. If they're up 6-0, he probably pitches longer. If it's anywhere near a tight or competitive game, I think he comes out after 18 to 22 hitters.
Kopech, Brazier, and then Treinen all win an inning apiece in that Mets game you're talking about to go in game 3.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, there was a game where they used Kasparius and
he went 2. He closed the game with 2 innings.
Okay. Yeah, and Edgardo Enriquez.
But I'm saying order-wise, Buehler, Kopech, Brazier, Treinen.
Got you, thank you. Yeah, and then for the bullpen game, they didn't really have their long relievers. They just kind of had to play it from there. So yeah, Kasparius finishing that off. They've like upgraded him in terms of their packing order too. And
yep.
if it is a close competitive game, if they need a long reliever today, I think amongst the three guys I listed, he might be the first choice, even over Honeywell. So, yeah, Kasperius, I think decent chance of getting into this game tonight, and pitching potentially getting 6 outs for the Dodgers. So, but in terms, we didn't discuss like series props, just in terms of the overall like series overview. The big edges before games 1 and game 2 were the Yankees series spreads. I like those much more than the correct score props. Yankees minus 1.5, minus 2.5. Then it switched after game 1. It switched to Yankees plus 2.5, Yankees plus 1.5. There's still value on Yankees plus 1.5 right now. FanDuel has a plus 195. I make that line plus 168, plus 169. Nice. So that at plus 180 or better, I think certainly Yankees plus 1.5 games. I was able to bet, if you follow me in the Action Network app, I was able to bet Yankees plus 3.5 at minus 230 when I made that minus 450. I was able to bet Yankees, or I was able to bet the series to go over 5.5 games, plus 125. Make that minus 150. So if you follow me in the Action Network app, just your daily reminder, as these games wrap up, different books will post their spreads. They will post their updated futures. They will post games or lines for the following game. I try to jump on those as quickly as possible because that's when we will find our most significant edges. That over 5.5 games was a 12% edge. I will not find that very often at all throughout the year. That's probably a 1 or 2 time thing. So just a reminder, follow me in the Action Network app. You can get yourself down on some of these larger edges that will not exist 2 days after the game ends. Unfortunately, we do not podcast over the weekend. So between Saturday night and Monday morning, all of these lines have sort of been hammered into place, but doing our best to identify the value that's still out there as of right now. But just wanted to shout out these series spreads. The edge on them shrunk substantially after the first couple games, but the Yankees plus 1.5 still seems like there's an actionable number out there at plus 195.
Okay. Anything, BJ, from you on a bigger picture standpoint? Anything MVP? Or it's Freddie Freeman's award to lose, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, how can you take it away if the Dodgers win this series and he hit the grand slam in game 1, right? I would say, as far as if you're looking at, World Series MVP, I would say if you're looking, if you're somebody that's correlated, like Sean said, with the Yankees, I think Soto would be the guy right now to continue to try to hammer as the MVP because he's obviously been the one that's hitting the ball the best for the Yankees right now. But yeah, other than that, I would more look to hammer the Yankees on the series prices rather than trying to take an MVP.
Yeah, Yankees series price at plus 360 or better was my number. FanDuel is plus 360. But I think there's actually a bigger edge on that plus 1.5 game spread. So I would not go. I would take half the number basically and take the plus 1.5 games as opposed to taking the series line at this point. Just a slightly bigger edge on the plus 1.5.
Okay. This John Heyman story about Soto too, going to the Dodgers. Have you guys seen this?
I have not.
No, but I saw Dodgers fans calling it their Death Star lineup if Soto goes there. So that would be.
I saw that Teoscar Hernandez might be heading to the Astros the other day. I don't know if that's true or not.
Where does Soto play for the Dodgers though? And that doesn't really make sense from a team building standpoint. With Ohtani DHing, Soto is going to turn into a DH eventually, and Freddie Freeman plays first base, so you can't move either of them to first base. From a team building perspective, what happens in 3 years? Like, it's going to be great, but Soto can't play the outfield for very much longer. I think eventually he's going to go the Bryce Harper route and either move to first base or have to DH. So it's fun, but from a team building perspective, in 3 years, it's a mess. So I don't really know how the fit works unless Freddie moves back to third base, which seems unlikely.
Okay. It's just a report, but I thought that was, that was interesting. It's John Heyman's a well-followed guy, and that comes out after 2 games of the World Series, and the team that he's on is down 2-0. That's interesting eating coming into this week. We will have, including today, 4 episodes of Payoff Pitch this week because we've got 2 games in 2 straight days after this, Tuesday, Wednesday at Yankee Stadium. Thursday's a travel day. If there is a Game 6, we'll be here Friday when the series goes back to Los Angeles. So be on the lookout for that. And find Sean Zarello and BJ Cunningham in the free award-winning Action Network app, especially if these guys are adding to their daily portfolios as it pertains to series props or the game today with the strikeouts and the total. More specifically, that total that Sean broke down earlier for us. Okay, very good. We're back here tomorrow for Game 4 of the World Series between the Yankees and Dodgers. For BJ Cunningham and Sean Zarello, Brendan Glasheen, thanks for tuning in to Payoff Pitch. We are Action Network's MLB betting podcast. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.